Welcome to Click for IB Biology. This video is about the regulation of heart rate and the nervous innervation of heart rate. We'll take a look at, very quickly take a look at cardiac muscle. We'll look at the external factors that regulate heart rate, and we'll also take a look at what is called myogenic heart rate. Should you wish to use the same presentation, then this can be downloaded as a PDF from the description and you can make your own annotations. There you'll also find a quick quiz, and occasionally there will be other resources in the channel links which are available. Cardiac muscle, often known as cardiac myocytes, have a specialized structure in comparison to skeletal or smooth muscle. And this is to do with the way in which these muscles connect to each other. In the diagram, in this photograph, we can see the cardiac myocytes coming down here. And by the way, they are branching, so that, like this, but they have these strong end wall connections between them, which are also shown here by this dark band going across like this, and indeed in the diagram here. And these are called intercalated discs. Now, for the moment, the understanding that it would be worth having is to understand that cardiac muscles can transmit the impulse to contract from one cell to the other, and they do so by using the special pores which are in these intercalated discs. And we'll revisit this topic in another part of the syllabus. The heart is connected to the brainstem, the medulla, or medulla, as some people pronounce it. And within the medulla, there's a group of specialized cells called the cardiac center. Now, the cardiac center is informed of physiological changes within the body, such as carbon dioxide levels and oxygen levels within blood, the pH of blood, and it is able to then send out impulses, nerve impulses, to the heart, and the target of the heart for those nerves is this structure here in the right atrium, which is called the sinoatrial node, or SAN for short. And the sinoatrial node has some very specialized features. If we could just notice that there are nerves connecting into the sinoatrial node, some of them speeding up heart rate and others slowing down heart rate. The interesting thing is that if these nerves are disconnected, the heart actually retains the capacity to contract. And this is a phenomena called myogenic rhythm. So the heart can still beat even though it is not connected to the brain. And then, just as a side note here, we will also at the end discuss the influence of hormones on heart rate just briefly. Myogenic rhythm. The sinoatrial node is able to generate an impulse to contract that spreads across the heart muscles through the intercalated discs. And as you can see in the diagram, it spreads through the two atria, and the speed of conduction is so rapid that it would cause the two atria to contract simultaneously. So we could call that atrial contraction or atrial systole. That impulse to contract does not spread down into the ventricles. Instead, there are some sensitive cells called the atrioventricular node, atrioventricular node. This picks up the depolarization, the impulse to contract, and conducts this down through the septum of the heart and into fibers which emerge into the heart muscles, into the ventricles. And then it will cause the contraction of the ventricle. So in myogenic rhythm, the contraction of the heart is first of all generated by the sinoatrial node itself. This causes atrial contraction first, pumping the blood down, but then is followed after a short delay by ventricular contraction, ventricle contraction, which actually forces the blood upwards and out into the arteries. Again, in the cardiac cycle, we will look at some of the consequences for valves opening and closing. As the heart has its own capacity to create its heartbeat, the heartbeat comes from within the heart, from the sinoatrial node and myogenic rhythm. The nerves coming from the cardiac center simply accelerate or decelerate the heart, accelerate or decelerate the myogenic rhythm in response to the demand from the body. So therefore, if one were exercising, you could imagine that we would be using the accelerator nerve, and if we were trying to return the body to a state of relaxation, we would be using the decelerating nerve. There is another mode in which the heart rate can be altered, and that occurs due to the hormone epinephrine. Epinephrine is also known as adrenaline. This is produced from small organs on the apex of the kidney, which are called the adrenal glands. And when one is subject to stress, something frightening, we secrete hormones from the adrenal gland, which is epinephrine. This travels through the blood and targets the sinoatrial node, accelerating heart rate. And this, of course, is known as the fight or flight response, which is a classic mode of self-protection from threats. Heart rate is often measured and portrayed in graphic form in what is known as an ECG or an EKG, with this characteristic pattern shown in this enlarged section of graph to the left. This initial peak is called the P wave and is associated with the contraction of the atria, as we described in the myogenic rhythm. This electrical disturbance here across the heart is known as the QRS complex, and this is associated with ventricular depolarization or ventricular contraction. The T wave actually shows the heart relaxing and recharging for the next contraction. These are then shown in ECGs, EKGs, as traces like the following, and a medical professional can use these in the diagnosis of heart conditions. These links show ways to the next videos in the sequence for a potential subscription to the site and to other videos in the playlists. Thank you very much.